Privyet. I was working on a game background just for fun over the weekend called Masochist, in which a Trotskyist USSR essentially takes over the world. And it occurred to me while I was working on that, while I was watching the news with the whole American election thing coming along, that a lot of people just don't seem to actually know what a lot of these political terms mean, like liberal or conservative or socialist or communist. I actually studied politics, so I thought it might be useful to make a little educational video to let people know what these things actually mean. I'll be basically abridging and commenting from the Dictionary of Political Thought by Roger Scruton. You can look him up if you like. He's no lefty, certainly, but this is one of the main reference works that people use while we're studying. So, where should we start? Conservatism? It may surprise you. Then again, it may not, if you know the meaning of the word. Okay, conservatism is essentially the political outlook which springs from the desire to conserve existing things held to be either good in themselves or better than the likely alternative, or at least safe, familiar, and the objects of trust and affection. So conservatism is essentially preservation of the status quo, well, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to mean. So basically resistance to change, better the devil you know, yeah, let's keep things how they are, it tends towards nostalgia. There's obvious issues with that, but I'm not here today to particularly rant against any particular political outlook. I will just say that this idea of conservatism, of preservation, does not seem to match up either to the Republican Party in the US or the Conservative Party in the UK, both of which are actually fairly radical in their approach. Right-wing radical, but certainly not conservative. It's not about preservation, it's about change, shifting things around. And certainly in this country, if you go back to Thatcher's time and after, it was a lot of change. It wasn't about preservation. So, conservatism is inherently conservative. It wants to keep things as they are, really. Okay, liberal. Okay. Liberalism is a very loose and woolly political term. It doesn't have a really hardcore definition. But key to it, and this may again surprise you, are ideas such as limited government, curtailing government compared to individual rights, empowering and protecting the public through charters, bills of rights, guarantees, checks and balances, all that sort of thing. Belief in the supreme value of the individual, his freedom and his rights. Individualism in the metaphysical sense. Belief that the individual has natural rights which exist independent of government, which ought to be protected by and against said government. Recognition of the supreme value of freedom. A human-centric rather than theological view of human affairs, and a belief that rights and duties are universal to everybody, that basically they come from the human condition, so that we all have responsibilities and rights interlocking with each other. Advocacy of tolerance in matters of morality and religion. So, yeah, as long as it doesn't really hurt anybody, do what you want. Okay, I'm sure that runs 180 degrees from what most people in the States would classify a liberal as. They seem to think it's something more excuse me, something more controlling, against rights rather than for rights, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay. Socialism. Okay, this seems to be hugely misunderstood, so I'm probably going to spend the most time on this one. Okay. To start with, there is the problem that socialism has two main definitions. In Marxist theory, socialism is a stage, it's a step on the way towards communism. It's where you have a powerful state or a powerful group that dismantles the existing society and prepares it for communism. Okay? Now that is the kind of socialism that it seems that Americans are afraid of, but it's not really socialism in the way that we mean it in modern times, which is the second meaning. Second meaning is the theory and practice of socialism as its own ideology, as in it's not a step on the way, it's where you stop. This is what socialism is. So, it's non-transitional, mixed economy, so you have state control and private control. It's based upon these following principles. 1. The premise of equality. This may be variously stated in terms of equal opportunity, egalitarianism, and so forth. The main consideration is that human beings have equal rights, since they're equal in every respect relevant to their rights. Now, being equal doesn't mean being the same. Equal rights, not equal capability, equal responsibility, whatever else. Okay? It just means everyone gets treated the same, no matter how rich, no matter how poor. You have a baseline set of rights. 2. The state is an administrator. The state is seen not as the legal and ceremonial manifestation of civil society, but rather as an administrative device, which is meant to guarantee the individual rights and to distribute benefits amongst the citizens in accordance with those rights. The state is concerned with distribution and must provide and maintain the institutions which ensure that human goods, food, medicine, education, recreation, and so on are made available to everybody on terms that are as equal as possible. It doesn't mean you divide everything up. Again, that's equal opportunities, equal rights. A chance. Everyone has a chance, is the idea there. And the state acts as a guarantor of that chance. 3. The elimination of systems of control. So, the socialist state acts as a watchguard against hereditary privilege, the concentration of power, the emergence of oligarchs and plutocrats. So basically it stands as a barrier in the way of someone taking over, is the idea. Okay, that pretty much covers socialism, but as you can see, it's, again, not how it's painted. Communism next. Okay, communism is a social and economic arrangement defined by the fact that no participant owns significantly more than any other. Essentially, everything is held in the collective. In actual communism, there would be no real state. It wouldn't be the dictatorship that we think of when we think of communist states. In fact, none of the states that call themselves communist are really communist at all. State capitalist, dictatorships, they're just not communist. So the idea is that everything is held in the collective wheel. The idea of the profit motive disappears. It becomes use value is how things are valued, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Full communism is incompatible with exchange values, the idea of money. Basically, what's needed goes where it's needed from people who are capable of providing it, is the idea. And the state melts away. It's essentially left anarchism. They both end up in the same kind of place at the end. They just have slightly different views on human nature. Now, what we really find here is a tension between two kinds of freedom. And both sides of the political debate need to recognise that there are these two kinds of freedom, and they're in opposition with each other. On the one hand, you have freedom from, on the other hand, you have freedom to. And if you have more freedom on one side, it necessarily impinges on freedom on the other side. To take a childish and facile example, your freedom to own and fire a gun impacts on my freedom from being shot. Your freedom to express yourself freely, to produce art, film, theatre, whatever, may impinge on someone else's freedom from being offended. Your freedom to practice your religion may impact on someone else's freedom from being subjected to bigotry. And this is where the debate really needs to take place. In each instance, there needs to be an ongoing debate. Which do we value more? Our individual freedom to do something, or our freedom from being impinged upon? And that's where the debate really lies between the left and right in the UK and the US. Which do we hold to be more important? All this fuss over health service. In the UK, we very much feel that we should have a freedom from falling ill and freedom from worry and fret and cost if we do fall ill. And so we have the NHS, which we love. In America, much more emphasis on freedom too. Freedom to not pay taxes, freedom to choose your medical practitioner who's going to look after you. But you only have those freedoms if you have money. So your freedom potentially to choose impacts on everyone's freedom from infirmity and ill health. I've found that socialist ideas work better for some things and capitalist ideas work better for others. I've lived through the privatization of the railways, electricity, gas, water, telecommunications, and these kind of big structural projects where you can work together as a country, where you can get an economy of scale, things that need to be more universal, like health and infrastructure. These tend to work better, in my experience, when it's done at the collective societal level. Whereas if you want innovation or tailored instances of things, then you want to go for the more capitalist free market approach. The trouble is you have ideologues on all sides who think their way is the solution to absolutely everything. And unfortunately, both here and in the US, it's the freedom to people that completely seem to dominate the debate. But we really need to recognise, I think, that we're part of an overall society, stop using all of these terms as pejoratives, and get the debate where it needs to be. Do we want freedom to do things, or do we want freedom from things? Thanks for listening.